about. Trying to figure out what it's all about. Existentialist. Am I worth anything or just discount? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
That was the great sounds of Wata with Outside on WNHH-LP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, with my partner in crime, Long Island raised, Elm City made, EZ Blues is in the building. EZ Blues, you're better with introductions more than me. Who do we have with us today on Behind the Brand?
Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you the importance of a herald. A herald is someone that takes what is going on in the world and they tell us about it. It initially started out standing on the street corners of the town, screaming out, "Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye," with new decrees going on. Throughout history, it has morphed, it has changed, it has evolved to the point where now that we're a little bit more open going out into the world of shows and different things, there's not a show that I have gone to that I have not seen this amazing human being run into her with her notepad out and truly basking in the amazingness that is the New Haven scene. An artist, a reporter, a radio host, and a teacher. Let's put our hands together, not if we're driving. If we're driving, we keep our hands at 10 and 2 because no one wants to be in an accident. But put your hands together mentally for the amazing Karen Ponzio. How are you? Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me here. I'm doing well. The sun is shining and I'm so happy to see it. That's my big thing today. That's my big breaking news today is that the sun came out and I was like, what's that?
Well, it's been rather a gray couple of days. 2022 was like, we're gonna come in, but kind of like in like a Brit pop type of way. We're gonna come up a little rainy, and then we'll have one or two songs that'll make you dance for a second, and then you'll be all right. But absolutely, for the audience that doesn't know you, we are here to give them a little bit more information about who you are. But in particular, I want to dive a little bit more into the artistic side. Because I can jump on Facebook right now and find 12 articles that you put out of the New Haven Independent, which is absolutely amazing. But you also play these incredible shows, and I personally don't think the light has been shined enough on that. So let's give you a little bit of time. What made you decide to be an artist?
Yeah, so from when I was a kid, I just loved anything. I loved books. I was reading from when I was like 3. It's something ridiculous. Like I read everything. Like I would read like the directions to a board game and the backs of cereal boxes and like any magazine, paper, book, anything I could get my hands on, and of course, this is way pre-internet. So, whatever I had access to, that's what I read. So maybe I was reading things maybe kids don't typically read. But I just did that. And I was just fascinated by books and making a book and writing a book and writing stories. So I would make these little books out of, little drawings and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I tended just to be, and I loved music. I loved movies, anything arts, entertainment. And I kind of like was in my own little world in a way. Like I would make all these things. Mm-hmm. I was also that person, that typical like 80s, 70s, like would sit there at the radio with my tape recorders. I don't know how old you guys are, but you'd sit there with like record and play for the radio and hit to try to get the song and make all these, tapes, and not even making mixtapes for other people, just for me, just to capture songs because I couldn't buy all the records, even though I wanted to. So it just kind of came from there. I just loved to write. I started writing some poetry in school, but, it was like, what I would maybe call like, sad girl, teenager kind of, stuff like that. I didn't play an instrument. I wanted to, but I just didn't. I was very shy and very scared of a lot of things. And I went to school for physical therapy. I'm a physical therapist. So I did not go to school to write or do any art or anything like that, though I did work in the writing lab at Quinnipiac, my English teacher was like, you're really good at this. Do you want to do this? I was like, oh yeah, anything to get in that. But, I don't know, I can't speak for anybody now, but in back then it was like, I did very well in school. I was very smart and had very good grades. And, it was like, well, you have to do something, you have to be a lawyer or a doctor or, I really didn't know what I wanted to be. I wanted to go in healthcare. I wanted to help people. So I chose physical therapy, and I think I chose well because I did it and I loved it. But there was always something in me kind of wishing I still read a lot. I always did something creative, but I was raising my kids. I was taking care of my parents. I was doing all these other things. I didn't actually get to all the writing, poetry, that kind of stuff till I was almost 40 years old.
Wow.
So I took a really long break from things. And then I went to graduate school. I went for my master's degree in a program that's now called integrative medicine. Okay. So kind of like a holistic healing type of thing. And it was writing based. And that's when I got back into writing again. And then I started writing poetry and drawing some pictures and doing things like that. And then I'll jump to, there's kind of a few little things here and there with it, but what ended up happening is as I got into my 40s, I was like, and my kids were getting older. I was like, my dad passed away, and I'm like, I really have to, what can I do for me? And I went to, my husband and I started going out to eat more and doing more things out and a couple of shows. And I went to Cafe 9.
Oh, wow.
And I loved it. I loved it. And my husband was kind of like, oh, he doesn't like to stay up late. He's opposite of me. I like this. He's very low key and chill. And I was like, oh my God, I love this. I have to come back here. And he's like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, do you care if I go by myself?
Okay.
And he's like, I don't care. Do what you want, And I went and the rest is history. Pretty much everything since then came from starting to go to Cafe 9 and going to Get to the Point, which was a storytelling type of show that Chris Arnott hosted on Monday nights. And then I got up there and read, and then I was in another show called Words of Music that Margaret Milano had started while Get to the Point was off for a while. And I read there, I hosted, I went to open mics, I went to the outer space open mic, which, when there was the outer space, the front room there.
In Hamden.
I just got back into all that again. And it just blew up. Like I was just doing it all the time. And then I was just at shows constantly. I was out probably 4 nights a week, maybe 5. Just going to shows, getting to know people, performing, hosting. And then Brian Slattery said to me one day, did you ever think about writing for the Indie? And I was like, nope. And he's like, I said, because I never thought about it. I just, was honest. I never thought about it. And he's like, well, would you like to try? And I'm like, well, hell yeah. They don't, in my mind, the world is not set up to offer opportunities to women who are almost 50 to create, write for money. So, I was like, I have to try this. I have to say yes to this thing that was like a dream for me to write about music and art. Like that's the thing I loved my whole life. So I said yes, and I loved it. And can I say I'm good at it? I think I'm good at it in the sense that, not to brag about it, but to say that I have my whole heart into it. I love it. I just love it so much. So everything I do with my writing for the Indie comes from my heart. I just love it. I really do. I love the community. I'm at the advantage of being in it from 2 ways because I'm a performer and host, and I also write it. So I'm always a fan. And I think that's to my advantage. And I think that's what works for it, is because I go into everything like, yes, it's like, yes, I'm in a show. This is awesome. Like I'm never not like a fangirl to a degree. So yeah, that's really, and the radio show came from being out in the scene, and I still do my poetry, and I've performed that. I've hosted all these open mics. So yeah, everything kind of came from me being out and getting to know people and trying things and being offered opportunities and saying yes to them.
Everything was meant to happen.
Right.
It really,
No, exactly.
Yeah, it really all just kind of fell into place. When people say, like you're lucky or you're in the right place at the right time. I definitely think I was in the right place at the right time. But I also think that, when I think about, because, sometimes I would say, early on, I'd say to myself, like, should I be doing this? Am I like the right person for this? Is there somebody better at this than I am? I feel like anybody who does anything creatively always questions themselves.
It's true.
I've never met an artist who's like 100% confident. We all question ourselves. So I question myself. And then the thing I always reminded myself of is that, they didn't have to ask me to do this. Brian didn't have to choose me. He's the one who came up to me and said, did you ever think about doing this? So I know that, and we've had, Brian's a great friend of mine. We've had many conversations about this, but, I know that same thing with the teaching. When I started teaching, I know they didn't have to ask me to teach. Saul asked me to teach, and he could have asked many people. So I know that, anything that I do, that I put myself into, whether it was my other career as a physical therapist or the artistic career, the idea is to put your whole self into it. Like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do anything at, like 25 or 50%. I want to be as close to 100% as I can. I mean, recently, the past couple of years have been tough, but still, I just, there's always moments, but so whether it's artistic, creatively, science, arts, whatever, I'm a big fan of marrying the science and the arts. So.
Right. There you go.
That's integrated medicine.
It's really, really interesting because I love the natural path your life has taken, and you could see like the seeds planted earlier. I was the same type of kid that would sit there, eating my cereal in the morning, staring at the cereal box, reading the different things, or trying to figure that out, or back in the day, for the childrens that are listening right now that probably should be in school but they're not. For the childrens that are listening, back in the day we didn't have our phones to sit through, so you had whatever catalog was in the loo, as they say in other countries, and that's what you were sitting there and reading while things happen, or while you're sitting at the breakfast table or dinner table while said parent had the newspaper out. You began to mimic your parent, but you had the cereal box, or you had whatever papers you had from school the day of. And I think it's absolutely incredible. What I also really want to highlight, and you see this a lot more with Gen X than you ever saw with the boomers, is that second act. The second act is so big, where Gen X finally feels like they can come out more of their shell and are done with the normal grind that was forced down their heads. You're too smart just to go to school for this. Make sure you're going to school to be a doctor, a lawyer, yada, yada. And this was literally a narrative that was beaten into your head. How many times I heard you have so much potential if you just worked up to your potential. And I'd be like, I don't really care about, Western civilization. This class bores me. I'm completely out of my mind, or I'm dealing with calculus when I'm like, look, I already know how to break up a chord. I'm good when it comes to that math aspect. I know this is as far as I want to go math-wise. Can you show me what I want to do in the field that I want to be in? And they're like, no, that's not what we do here. In fact, we're going to try to discourage you from that career as much as humanly possible, because that's not a safe bet and you're taking too high of a risk. But here's $250,000 in student loans in a career you don't want.
Well, I mean, I'm very I'm very fortunate. So I picked something, like I said, I knew I wanted to help people, and I picked physical therapy, went to Quinnipiac knowing they had a bunch of health programs that if I wanted to transfer, I could. But I loved physical therapy. I still do.
Right.
You know, I was very fortunate. I think it's incredibly difficult at 16, 17 years old to decide what you want to go to college for, never mind where you want to go. I mean, that is
Right.
I mean, the fact that I will say, I think I was very lucky, because I know, you know, I had many friends who went to college and dropped out first semester or first year, you know, or who changed, you know, and then you have, you know, or who changed, you know, my own son changed his major a couple of times. And I told him that. I'm like, I told both so I have two sons who are both in their 20s. They're both out of school. But I told both of them, I'm like, you know what? Figure out what you don't want to do. Yeah. Don't even think, what do you want to do? Figure out what I don't want to do. Do you hate math? Then do not go into a math-based field. You know, like I just said to them, make sure you know what you don't want to do, because I think nothing's worse than when a parent or somebody says to you, you know what, go into this. Oh, you don't like, oh, don't worry, you'll learn to like it. I think that's a difficult place to be in as a teenager, never mind an adult, you know. And then for me, you know, pretty much the reason I got out of what I was doing was because I was working at a place for 25 years, and just where I was working, it was just not, they changed ownership, and a lot of things changed, and healthcare in general just changed. And the kind of work I did was, I needed a lot of time to do it, and they were shortening our times with patients. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I was performing and stuff. I was still writing, performing, and doing that stuff, but I quit that job and wasn't doing anything else. I was just kind of like, I need a break from all this. My parents had been sick and things like that. My mother was still ill. My mother was still alive then. And then by the end of the year is when I started working for the Indy. I mean, I was still doing some per diem work. And then I started teaching. And once I started teaching is when I got away from it. So, I mean, realistically, probably if I wasn't teaching right now, I might still be doing a few hours patients here and there. I love seeing patients. I love meeting people, you know, I love meeting new people. In fact, that's one of the things that Brian, when I started doing this, and then I started covering shows, and then I started doing some interviews. And he said to me one day, and he's like, why are you so good at interviews? And I said, well, I've been interviewing people for 25 years. I mean, in physical therapy, you have an hour to meet somebody, get to know them, figure out what's wrong with them, and treat them. So you are in this mode of getting to know somebody and asking questions that are geared towards that person. So it becomes, you're in like a time crunch to get to know somebody. So when I talk to somebody, a musician, an artist, a writer, whoever, I don't have to figure them out in an hour. That's not my job anymore. I don't have to figure them out. But I have no trouble, you know, initiating a conversation of getting to know somebody and getting them to tell me about themselves, or making them comfortable enough to tell me about themselves and what they're into, and giving them that time. That's one thing I really love about the profession of physical therapy and the healthcare in all the healthcare professions, is that we spend time getting to know people. Where a lot of people in other healthcare professions, you know, that's when you hear people say, you know, I went to see so-and-so and they barely looked at me. Or this is the most, I have people come to me and say, this is the most anyone's ever talked to me about this problem in years. So I think with physical therapy, the way it had been for years is that we spent a lot of time talking to people and listening to them. And I think that comes in, that's very important when you're doing this kind of work. So same thing with going to a live show. So you see me in a live show, it's way different if I'm at a live show and I'm not there reporting on it. If I'm there as a fan, that's one thing. If I'm there reporting on it, I still know people. It's very hard to go to a show and not talk to people. But when that show goes on, paying attention, and it's again, similar to my other job. I have to see what's going on. So if
Right.
you know, if you are my patient, I have to see how you walk, how you move, how you sit, how you bend, you know, depending on what we're looking at. I have to see all these different things. If I'm at a live show, I'm watching what the act's doing. I'm watching what the crowd is doing. I'm feeling the vibe. Is it a cool vibe? Is it a chill vibe? Is it more amped up? Different things like that. So I'm not necessarily analyzing or trying to diagnose or figure out the act, but I am trained in watching people.
And you are on Behind the Brand on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, and my partner in crime, Long Island Raised, Elm City made, EZ BlueZ is in the building. Karen, we got you with us on the show. I'm so excited to learn about all this information. But tell me, how do you feel as a host of a live show? I'm seeing these pictures online. You enjoying yourself? I think it was Cafe 9 you were at. Hosted a live program. Tell me about
that. I've hosted quite a few things at Cafe 9. I hosted an open mic. I hosted 2 open mics before COVID hit. I hosted a monthly open mic at Best Video for a couple of years. Second Wednesdays there, and then I was hosting at New England Brewing Company, an open mic there on third. I was doing second Wednesday and third Thursday. And one month they were in the same week. That was weird, but yeah, that was super weird. It was like, how did that happen? But yeah, so and that's where you need your math. That's where that math comes in.
Yes.
So it always comes back. So yeah, so doing the live shows, I really do love doing them. Being that I host a radio show for cygnusradio.com, which is an internet radio station. So so occasionally I will still, so the open mics are not happening, but the Sunday Buzz at Cafe 9 is Cygnus Radio sponsored. Right. So Frank Fratelli typically hosts that, and every so often if he's not available, I will host that.
Nice.
Yeah, I've hosted some different like fundraiser types of events at Cafe 9 and other places. I've also this recently last year when Rob Nelson passed away, which was absolutely heartbreaking to the community. They did a show, a tribute to him and his music, and I hosted that during the Sunday Buzz, and that was a really important moment. It means a lot when it's something like that, someone that's important to you. So yeah, I mean, anything that I've done with that, I always feel very honored to do it. And I think that's also translated into my teaching, because I wasn't a teacher. I did the graduate school that I went to for my degree. I did for 2 years. I did have a group of my own, but you called a program coordinator more than a teacher. So you're kind of organizing things as opposed to standing up there and lecturing. But I will say, I think that the hosting duties I've done on the stages of New Haven and Hamden have definitely helped me with my teaching. And I think my teaching has also helped me, it's gone both ways, so I feel like now when I'm up there, it's like I'm there, like I'm present in a different way than maybe I was before. I don't know. I don't myself. I can't really say. A couple people say stuff to me about it though.
Well, no, and that's a really big thing, and I think a lot of people really don't look at the performative aspect that is required of teaching, because it is. You have a captive audience, whether it be a class of 12 or 32, that you have to get a point across to. You have to perform well enough that they absorb at least a 10% of what you're doing, because 10% of what they're being taught is what's going to be on the test. And so it makes so much sense, and I love that people are talking about that. There are, everyone has those incredible teacher stories of their lives. That one teacher that would come in in cosplay before cosplay was a thing, and, you know, rattle off Shakespeare, walk in the door holding the skull and talking about Yorick and how well he knew him. You know, you had those moments, and those moments are very transformative. You know, I'm a huge Robin Williams fan. Dead Poets Society was that movie for me that made me understand the performative aspect of teaching more than anything else. You know, Captain, my Captain, let's stand up on a desk, and, you know, I actually in high school stood up on a desk.
Oh dear.
It was to tick off a teacher, not to impress one, but it still happened. You know, I have issues. It's fine. But this is what's so incredible, and what's great about your story is it seems almost, and again, we're looking back at it retrospectively, we're not going through the struggles as they were evolving at those times and those places, but it really seems when you look back, everything you did from start all kind of played into each other, and it's this amazing domino effect that has brought you to where you are today. And for those starting out in the scene, in music period, understand that the reporters, especially in New Haven, you know, are part of this community aspect. It isn't just the bands that you're playing with. It isn't just the hip hop acts that you're playing with. It isn't just the crew that you roll with. You know, you need to start talking more with the sound people. You need to start integrating yourself more with the bartenders. You need to start developing relationships with reporters, so that for no other reason, like, I think one of the coolest parts for me, and I've seen it with a bunch of different artists, if the crowd hasn't quite come back from the bar yet, Karen is sitting right there. And from the first drop of the beat, she's into it. And you can connect as the singer or the front person. You look at Karen and you can see that she's feeling it that moment. And then you watch. And it's incredible to see. I saw it at Chesky and Fat Astronaut in particular. You were just standing against the pole, and they were connecting with you as you were vibing with music, and then the crowd started to fill in, and it was almost like a Fellini-esque moment, and I was so blessed to see it and partake in it.
I wasn't reporting on that one though. I wasn't reporting. Brian reported on that one, so that was
Ryan
actually,
did record. Yeah.
Yes. Brian actually reported. So I had the fortunate experience of the past couple of Big Chesky shows that Brian was reporting on him, and I went to it because, you know, again, I went as a fan. You know, obviously we're talking about it and stuff too, so we have some interaction and stuff, you know, Brian and I and all that about it, but he's reporting on it. So that one, but I will say, like, that even when I'm not reporting, it's hard to not look at it like a reporter. I'm always me. And maybe that's another one of the reasons why, you know, Brian chose me or thought about me for it. Maybe that's part of it too, is that I was just, before I was a reporter, I would take a lot of pictures, I would take video, I would post things on social media. I was just so into it, you know, and I'm always into it. I'm very rarely at a show where I'm like, even if I'm on my phone or checking things, I'm very rarely like disconnected from very rarely disconnected from the show. If I'll be very honest with you. If I'm disconnected from a show I'm at, there's probably something else going on in my life, and that's distracting from it, like a personal thing. Right. You know what I mean? But otherwise, I'm at that show. I'm there to be there. I'm there to connect with the person there just because I love it. You know what I mean? I just love it. I mean, nobody can be 100%. Listen, I'm a performer too. There's many times I've been on stage and you see people doing their thing. I don't take that personally. I never take that personally. I'm going to perform my poetry. I'm going to address the crowd the same way I would if everybody was looking at me, or if 2 out of 50 people were looking at me. I mean, if I'm a host, I might try to gear people up a little more. But which I've had to do, which I've done, and you know, that's your role. But I'm not gonna like be like, you know, and you know, you're a performer, you know, I'm not gonna sit there and go like, well, I'm gonna give 50%. I'm
Right.
always gonna give that all. And I feel like as a audience member, I want to give as much as I can too. Now I love to dance and I love to get into it. If I'm reporting, I can't do that as well as much as I can if I'm just as a fan. So that's where that comes in. And I've written about that where I'm like, put the camera and the notebook down and, fat astronaut, it's time to dance. You're a fat astronaut. You're dancing. I don't know about you, but I'm dancing. So yeah, that definitely, yeah, I want to do my best as part of the community. And like you mentioned, Brian's also part of the community. Brian plays, I mean, he's a performer in, we've lost track of how many bands Brian's in. If you can name them all, you win a prize. So.
No, it's incredible to see, and especially, for kids more toward going in the suburbs area, kids more from like, I'm from Long Island initially, and we don't necessarily, everything is so far apart, we don't necessarily have a collective scene. 35 to 40 minutes between venues, it becomes more difficult. But when you come into a small city aspect or a bigger city aspect, to see this incredible community aspect and to really understand that every single thing plays into it. I love that you mentioned, as a performer, you always give that 100%. And me, I'm a little bit more of an antagonistical performer. If I don't feel like the crowd's giving me 100%, I give 200%. Because I also come from the philosophy, I'm a huge Sister Act fan. And when, Whoopi Goldberg's trying to get the quiet one to sing, talks about singing to that one person all the way in the back of the bar that's having the worst day humanly possible. And the only thing that's going to save that person is that note that comes out of your mouth. That's the person that I sing to, which is one of the reasons why I'm so darn loud. But it's incredible to see, and it's incredible to watch you engage. And what I really love is the vocal point and the viewpoint that you put up on stage when you're a performer is very similar, if not exactly the same, to you as a reporter. Yes, there are certain boxes you have to tick, the who, what, when, where, why, how, of the reporting aspect of it, but you're still able to hold very true to who you are. And from what we're hearing, from what you've told us, is this is all stuff that has been implanted in you through that aspect. And this new second act, is incredible. I love, and I will actually look at physical therapy very similar to what I call self-care, things like a hairstylist or a tattoo artist, where you have this time and you can really do need to get to know that person to find what that actual, original point of hurt is, or that original thing that inspired this tattoo piece, or the original, reason why you're getting your hairstyle to this particular part. You really get to see the person. And I love how you've taken that and that very true life experience and put that over into highlighting, local artists that are out there today, because there's a lot that, not as many people would know the amazing solo career of Mark Lyon, if not for how great your pen is. And it's true. His the funk soul single that he released for the pandemic relief last year would not have moved the units it moved if it didn't have the incredible coverage. And it's such a big thing, and I know that us as the artists really, really appreciate you. And I hope that everyone gives you your flowers now. And because you are both you and Brian are so important. First of all, as human beings, period. But for what you guys do to this local community, it's a blessing. And I know it can be a thankless job sometimes. I kind of do a little bit of reviews and artists get mad at me, and that's fine. Not everyone likes me. I've learned to live with that aspect. So there is this thanklessness to it. But it's one of the reasons why I was so adamant about having you on the show is because I wanted to be able to give you those flowers now, and for you to understand how important you are to the team. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I don't know, the whole thing of like a thankless job, like I think there's like most jobs, there's very, especially nowadays with everybody, with so much going on, everything being so tense. I don't even know if there is necessarily a job in this world where people appreciate the person doing it while, regularly. I think that, if being in healthcare is like that, like being in healthcare, people can be grateful. And there's people who are incredibly grateful, and there are people who are like, but I still have this little bit of pain. Why aren't you getting rid of it? There's no matter what you do. So I think, I don't even look at it in those terms anymore. I think part of that is also as I've gotten older. I hate to sound like that, kids, I'm not a kids these days or back in my day kind of person. Well, most people don't think I'm as old as I am anyway. So sometimes I try not to talk like that, because then they look at me weird, because I'm 54 and a lot of people think I'm way younger than in my 50s, but I'm going to be 55 this year. So I can do a back in the day before the internet thing if I wanted, but I try not to. But I think that you talked about second act. That's where it lies. So I did my job out of college, got married, bought a house, had my kids. I did all that at a fairly early age. Took care of my parents, good Italian Catholic girl, took care of my family, everything, did what I was taught to do. Right. And it's not that I threw all that away, but it got to the point in my life where, my father passed away, my kids got older, and it's like, okay, what do I want to do now? I don't have to be there. My mom was still around. My mom was still sick. I was doing that. It wasn't like I was abandoning my family. But if you have one kid in college, one kid in high school, I'm sitting there and, I was listening to all these people who were like, oh, what are you going to, you're like, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to, empty nest syndrome. You're going to have nothing to, what are you going to do? And I'm like, whatever I want. Like now, that was my answer. It's like, I'm going to do whatever I want. Now I don't have to be home to do this. I don't have to drive this kid here. I don't have to do that. And then my mom passed away. I started doing all this while my mom was still ill and we were still taking care of her. And then she passed away in the beginning of 2019. Right. And then even more so, it was like, and then my kids are, one's in New York, one's in Massachusetts. And I'm like, I don't have to do anything for anybody today. Right. And then tomorrow, oh, I don't have to do anything for anybody today either. It was very odd, very odd, and took a lot getting used to. And I wasn't, and that's the year I started teaching, 2019 also, that fall, when Saul Fusner, who I knew through the community, through the performing community in New Haven, who took over the creative writing program at ECA, asked me to teach journalism there, which is now kind of morphed into nonfiction. But because we're doing a few different things in there. But yeah, so where some people were like, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do. I was like, I'll do whatever I want. And then these opportunities came up and they were like a dream come true. They really were like a dream come true for me. I always wanted to teach. I didn't know how I could do it or where I could do it. And some places where I did, it was kind of tried it a little bit, was like, oh, I don't know about this, but this seems to fit really well. And, I started during obviously during a really weird time. So I've never done anything the same way twice, really, over the past, this is now my third school year teaching. Right. We're in person. I'm doing 2 days. Last year I did 1 day in person, 1 day remote. And last year I won a beginning teachers award at ECA. And I was like, me, really? Wow. I was really, again, it was like, what? And I was really happy. I was happy about that. I'm not an awards kind of person, like thinking like, oh, I have to win something or enter but I got it. And I was really proud of myself, because I do feel like I work really hard at it. Not that I don't work hard at reporting. But I feel like with teaching, I feel like with teaching and it being like, you know, the responsibility of these kids and guiding them, it's just a different level. But I don't, but I really, it's similar. I do, again, everything, like you said with dominoes, everything connects to each other. So I'm teaching them about writing, you know, doing interviews and writing about music and writing about film, and listening to other people's stories, you know? So you can make up your own stories for, you know, fiction and screenwriting and, you know, for those types of prose, those types of things. But you can listen to other people's stories or watch other people's stories and tell other people about them. Not everybody can tell their own story, you know, or sometimes you need that other perspective, which is what Brian and I do. You
It's
know,
what we do on WNHH on Behind the Brand, WNHH LP 103.5 FM New Haven, myself, Prestige, and my partner in crime, Long Island Rays, Elm City Made, EZ BlueZ is in the building. Karen, I hope I didn't stop your train of thought. Go right ahead.
No. That actually, that was kind of perfect, because that is what you do. It really is media, you know, in media. So the kids think of, a lot of times the kids in school will think of, they hear journalism, and then not just the kids, I'm sure other people too. You hear journalism and you think, you know, my example is always, you know, there was a fire at this building on this street, and this, you know, the firemen came at this time, and this many people were inside, and no lives were lost. You know, journalism is reporting. This happened here with these people this way. It's very fact-based. Okay, and there it is fact-based, but there are levels of journalism. So arts journalism reports facts about art. Here's what is being created, going on, but there's another level to it. It's your interpretation. It's the story behind the thing being created, the artist, the performer. So there's levels to it. There's criticism, you know, and I teach them, you know, and they work in workshops where they help each other, you know, criticize each other's pieces and comment on each other's pieces. But then there's the criticism of a piece of music or a piece of art or a movie, you know. And, you know, really what I do at the Independent, what Brian and I do is more, here's what I saw. Here's what happened, as opposed to I liked it or I didn't like it, if that makes sense. But I do still teach criticism in terms of, because they are, you know, they are already critical, and with the writing and the workshopping, let's bring it to another piece. You can be critical. It's not bad to be critical, but back yourself up. So, and I, you know, and that's with really, you know, that's something you can take everywhere. Like, you don't like something, okay, why don't you like it? Tell me why. That thing's amazing. That doesn't tell me anything. Amazing doesn't tell me anything. What is amazing about it? You know, so if I go to, you know, if I go to a show, it would be really easy for me to be up there and be like, Chesky was amazing tonight. And maybe I will say that, you know, but I could also say, you know, Chesky, you know, came off the stage, sat on the ground, surrounded by his fans, some of them with tears coming out of their eyes as he played this song. And you put you there and you're like, wow, that sounds amazing. You know, so I don't have to say amazing, because it sounds, you've described it and it sounds. And I think that, you know, to look at the world critically, and not critically, again, there's another word, and I'm a big word person, that critical is another word you look at and you immediately think bad. But critically just means giving it the time and attention, you know. And why not give the world and so many things time and attention? You want me to come from my other end, like the holistic, earthy, crunchy part of what I do. I mean, you look at the moon. I mean, poets and writers, all we do, we look at the moon, we're like, the moon, and I'm wearing a moon right now. You look at the moon, you try to describe the moon, you write poems and songs about the moon. And some people are like, the moon's out every night, who cares? I care. You know, so same thing with music, with art. 17 of my students can look at the same performance and 17 will describe it differently.
Right.
Now the four of us, the three of us could look at the three of us could look at something right now and we would all maybe notice something different or have a different feeling about it.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about. It's being critical. And sometimes you can, there are people who don't look at art critically or think about art critically, and they can look at something instead of just being like bad or good, you can look at it and maybe I describe it in a way or Brian describes it in a way, and it gives them a new perspective of it. And they don't necessarily have to have our perspective, but they can realize that there are multiple perspectives. And I think that's important to art. Listen, people will argue all the time that, we shouldn't be saying what I don't, like I've said it to people, I don't want to tell you what my poem's about. Hear the poem and you decide about.
Yeah.
But some people need a little, the door, someone to open the door for them or to guide them towards them. And I think that's important that we help tell the stories and help shine a light on these people and their work, because we need art. We need it. I need it. Maybe I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I'll say that one thing that is very consistent through the pandemic is that people were watching tons of movies and TV shows and listening to music and trying to get to shows outdoors if they could, and sports, and people wanted their entertainment. They wanted their art.
Speaking of entertainment, what have been some of your favorite interviews that you have done throughout your media career?
Oh, wow. I tell you, I've been so lucky. Like I've talked to so many different people. I don't know. It's fun talking to my friends who I know as friends, but I get to talk to them from the interviewing perspective, like Frank Critelli. I got to sit down with, talk to him one time, and it's like, we're having a conversation, but I'm interviewing you too. And to give them that time as individuals, to be like, I know you're my friend, but I want to talk about your art. We're talking about you. It's not, we're talking to each other, but we're giving you that space. And those kind of interviews have been great. Rick Allison, who I'm on Cygnus with, who is just one of the great human beings of the world, to sit down and listen to him talk about radio and music and his career. Even though I know him through Cygnus, it was such a gift. And then there's like the young performers just starting out. Like I remember, talking to Evelyn Gray, and introducing a really in-depth interview of people getting to know her, and for the album, the new album, that when that album was new. I can't say there's like, I know maybe that's not what you want, but I have a very hard time being like this person, that thing. Everybody really, they really all mean a lot to me. That may sound, maybe like, oh, come on. Listen, I've been doing this for 5 years. I've had people say to me, what's the worst show you ever went to? Who's the worst person you ever took? They always want to know the bad.
Oh yeah.
And I don't have a worst either, because knock wood, my worst experience was not bad. So I can't even think of it. I really have not gone. We are so lucky in New Haven to have such an array of performers. And again, I don't just go to shows that I write about. When the State House was having the jam, and going there and all of those performers there at once, and I didn't report on any of those either, but I went to them. I didn't have a chance to write about them, and I was almost kind of glad because every time I went to one, I was like, yes, and here comes Paul Brian Hudson, and here comes for Fernando Franco, and here, oh no, Tabisa's. It's like every time, and you're like, yeah, look at this talent we have. Like, look, it's just absolutely incredible. I am going to mention one interview that I did last year that really did mean a lot to me.
Okay.
That stands out right now, and I'll tell you why. It was Chad from Fat Astronaut. Chad did, and Chad did a record with an act called Dream Void with Expired Mocha. It came out of this program that Chad was involved in, an after-school program in New Haven, and collecting sound and putting in and working with the students. And I will say, I really loved that one because as a teacher, like hearing how Chad worked with the students to do that, and challenging their own creativity and creative process was super interesting to me as someone who's a creative and a teacher. I haven't done anything with the students, with my students, like a collective project like that. But that one was so interesting to me. It was really, I really thought, and the album is
phenomenal,
like,
so good.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that album is
incredible.
one of the, and I will say that album is one of the best albums to come out locally in the past year, if not years. It just, the sound is incredible. The songs are great. So that, to me,
it truly is. But unfortunately, just as we start to get into the real nit and grit, and we actually had Chad on as that project got released. Love Chad, love it. But we are at the end of our show. We want to give you the last moments to tell everybody how they can get in touch with you, how they can support you as an artist, as a writer, as a teacher. How can we hook you up? How do we get more Karen in our lives? The good Karen in our lives.
Yeah, so I am on all social media as KP the Word. My so any Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, I have KP the Word pages. I post my art and poetry. I post all my articles there. So I would say, read the New Haven Independent. If you're local, you got to check in there, not just the what Brian and I write, but whatever's going on in there. So my pieces are in there. I usually have something once a week, but if you want to follow, I always post my articles on my social media. My radio show is The Word According to KP. It's on every other Sunday morning on cygnusradio.com. So you can hear archived shows on demand at cygnusradio.com under The Word According to KP. I have a website, KarenPonzio.com. I'm not great about updating it. Social media is where you see more of that. Yeah, and I mean, that's also, again, social media is where you'll see if I'm hosting something or I'm going to be performing or anything like that. I don't have anything right now coming up performance-wise or hosting-wise that I can think of. And as far as teaching wise, that's my thing. I can't, and nobody can really support me with that, except I can say, what, support youth, support art, support, if you know anybody right now who's creating or who wants to create or is feeling kind of, again, a rough time. Some people have really used this time to blossom and put out a lot, and some people really are having a block. If you know somebody, whether they're 12 or 72 and they are a creative, tell them that you support them and you love what they're doing, and if they have something out, take a look at it and tell them what you think of it, and listen to their music, look at their art, read their stories. I mean, and just listen to each other. I mean, geez, that's an art right there. Just listen to each other. Everybody needs to be heard.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And you were heard today. I love hearing your story. Love hearing everything about you, Karen.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. Great to have you on WNHH-LP 103.5 FM New Haven. Myself, Prestige, with my partner in crime, Long Island raised, Elm City made, EZ BlueZ. This has been
what to write about. Trying to figure out what it's all about. Existentialist, am I worth anything or just discount? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Spending time all alone, sending my songs to the phone, dreaming of a better home, while focused on trying to hone this craft, witchcraft. I hope the brujas